Good afternoon, everybody. Happy July 4th. We're heading for the 4th of July in the United States. I'm Diane Sare. I'm a 33-year associate of Lyndon LaRouche, the late American patriot and economist. I'm running for U.S. Senate against Kirsten Gillibrand as an independent, and we are here. Poor George Washington is a little suppressed these days behind me on the scaffolding, but George Washington was sworn in here at Federal Hall in 1789, the first president of the United States. But unfortunately, after the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy and the Warren Commission cover-up, the people who ran the assassination of the Kennedys, of Martin Luther King, of Malcolm X, the people who ran the Vietnam War, are now running the country. That's why President Joe Biden, and I don't know if we can really blame him, he doesn't seem to know where he is. He thinks Putin has invaded Iraq. But whoever is running the White House is plunging us headlong into a thermonuclear war with Russia. And if we can't have a war with Russia, we're going to have one with China. Now, this is totally insane. It's far worse than you know. Thanks to the policies of the Obama administration, Victoria Nuland, and now the Biden administration, hundreds of thousands of people have died in the proxy war in Ukraine, which is really a war between NATO and the USA and Russia. And you know it because President Biden has said that the purpose of the war is the destruction of Russia. Now, can you imagine if President Putin or Xi Jinping said that the United States had to be destroyed and dismembered and our government had to be overthrown? Would you not see that as threatening?
Oh yeah, preach.
So we now have a situation where arrogant fools in the Biden administration believe that we should encourage the Ukrainian army to invade Crimea. And in fact, Michael McFaul, Obama's arrogant, pompous ambassador to Russia, literally said that if Putin nukes Ukraine, it's okay because it will make the Ukrainians fight harder. Can you imagine how our government looks to the rest of the world? Like a bunch of stark, raving lunatics. And the UK is probably worse, with Boris Johnson, who got a jumbo jet to contain his giant ego and flew over to Kiev in March, April of 2022 to make sure there was no peace agreement to prevent Ukraine and Russia from ending the war. So we are here today between, on the one hand, Federal Hall with George Washington representing the true principles of the American Revolution, and the other side, the New York Stock Exchange, which represents the tradition of the British Empire. And you see it's now called Savers Value Village. I think it's a thrift store. Did the New York Times turn into a New York Stock Exchange turn into a thrift store? It's sort of what it looks like. They're selling off their derivatives obligations at bargain basement prices because they're not worth anything. We are headed for the biggest crash ever in history, worse than what happened in 2008, because we didn't do anything to change our behavior. Hey, after 2008. We continued with the exact same policies, and now the banks that caused the blowout of 2008 are 1/3 bigger, and there are fewer of them. So get ready. But you have been ready, right? How much does it cost for a gallon of gasoline? How's your rent, New Yorkers? Are you getting everything you pay for in your rent? How are the streets? Yeah, there's someone calling for God to bless NATO. I think God would obliterate NATO with a lightning bolt, but it's up to us to do that. At any rate, so this bubble, this financial bubble is going to crash, and the holders of the bubble and the people responsible for the bubble, like King Charles, who talks of global Britain, and guardians of it like Janet Yellen, and then you have people like George Soros and the World Economic Forum. They believe that we can just push Russia up against the wall. Never mind that 27 million Russians died fighting Adolf Hitler, and they said never again. We can just keep pushing them against the wall, and somehow the economy is going to be great because of this. So the United States has got to regain its identity. The United States had a revolution based on the principle that every single human being on the planet is created equal, that some people were not born to rule over others. Now, I know you can't tell that these days because in the United States, we have a bunch of politicians who should be wheeled around in wheelchairs. It's a geriatric ward in the Congress, and I don't have anything against geriatric wards. I hope I'm still alive someday and can be in one. But the Congress is a geriatric ward. It's a bunch of people who are losing their teeth, who can't remember where they are, who can't get up, like Pelosi, who's got so much silicon. That's where Silicon Valley comes from, I think, is Nancy Pelosi's plastic surgery. And she kneels on the ground and then she can't get up again. That's what we have in the U.S. Congress. And these people are so idiotic, they are prepared to send all of our money over to the Ukrainian army, Ukraine, which is the most corrupt country in Europe. And guess what? The Russian ambassador to Mexico just posted photographs of American weapons which were sent to Ukraine but ended up in the hands of the Mexican drug cartels. So the Joe Biden arm your Ukraine to the death of every last Ukrainian policy is giving money to terrorists, terrorism and drug traffickers all over the world. It is not making us safe. Ukraine is not a democracy unless you think the United States is a democracy, which still has Julian Assange sitting in Belmarsh prison for the last 4 years. And now they're trying to extradite him. We should be dropping the charges. There should be no charges against Julian Assange. He was telling the truth about crimes committed by the United States. So please join my campaign. I'm Diane Sare. I'm an independent candidate for U.S. Senate. I am an anti-war candidate, an anti-crook candidate, an anti-speculative World Economic Forum candidate, and we have to fight to build a movement to get our nation back before the lunatics in Washington, D.C., along with the lunatic fringe in the city of London, blow up the world.